It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. John Spagnola, who graduated from Yale University with a BA in political science. He played 3 years of varsity football, was two-time All-Ivy first team, and finished his career as the all-time leading receiver with 88 receptions and 1,554 yards. Mr. Spagnola spent the majority of his pro career in Philadelphia, playing for 9 seasons, 8 active and starting for 5 seasons. After his playing days ended, Mr. Spagnola pursued a career in broadcasting, working for ABC Sports and covering college football. He also started an investment consulting business in 1992. His company was later sold to the PFM Group, where Mr. Spagnola serves as a managing director. Mr. Spagnola has taught courses on managing public funds for the Fels Institute of Government at the University of Pennsylvania and currently serves on the board of directors of McGee Rehabilitation Hospital, St. Rose of Lima Parish, and the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Spagnola to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not really here to address everybody. I'm here to interview Governor Doug Ducey of the state of Arizona. So please welcome our guest, Governor Ducey. And allow us a moment to fix our microphones on our lapels and get started here. And what I'll do is get things rolling with a couple of questions. But I invite all of you to think of something that you'd like to ask the governor so we can make this as fun and interactive as possible. So give us a minute. Hold on. So let's get started. Welcome to the 9th Annual Buckley Conference. I can remember the first conference, Lauren, right? It was held, I think it was held here, and it was a cash bar. It was a BYOB dinner. There was no swag, no umbrellas. No giveaways, nothing. Things were kind of tough back then, but we've come a long way. 230 students plus are now active in the Buckley program, so we're really excited to have you here. You are serving your second term.
First year of my second term, yes.
First year as 23rd governor of the state of Arizona. Congratulations. You were the state treasurer prior to that, and prior to that, you were in the private sector. Ooh, so tell us about how somebody from Cold Stone Creamery. By the way, who visited Cold Stone Creamery in their days here? Yeah, good.
It's good for you.
Great place.
Good for you.
We all admit that. So tell us about your experience in the private sector as a businessman. How that translated into state office in Arizona.
Sure. So first I want to say thank you, John, and Lauren, thank you for the invite. This is really a great burst of energy to be around so many young people committed to this cause. Todd, thanks for the invitation. Senator Buckley. So it's a real thrill for me to be at Yale. I've never been to Yale before, to be able to walk around the campus today and actually in the presence of the person that I think was the father of the modern conservative cause and see the legacy that he has left here. So my background is in the private sector. My company was Cold Stone Creamery. I always say that you get a lot of undeserved popularity when you sell ice cream, and it all goes away when you balance your first budget. So there are a lot of similarities to being a chief executive in the private sector. Believe it or not, a lot of my friends that I know from the business community, that is my social circle. When they see me now, they'll be like, are you okay? Is everything all right? As if I've been afflicted with some disease because I was elected to public office. But the great thing about being a governor is you are a chief executive. You set the agenda for your state. You pick the people and chart the course for what you want to do. And we ran on a very much a limited government, pro-free market, policies of personal responsibility, the same ideas that you'll read every 2 weeks in National Review, which is something I've been reading since I was 18 years old, and we're having great success in Arizona with it.
So one of the first acts, or maybe the first act, was the American Civics Act. Would you tell our audience what that's about and why you felt that was so important?
So I just had thought that the whole Jay Leno late night man on the street thing had run its course. It just wasn't funny anymore to ask somebody, you know, who's the vice president of the United States, and they had no idea who it was or how many branches of government. They thought that that was a trick question. So I was actually at a dinner during the campaign in the primary in 2014, and Richard Dreyfuss was at that dinner along with Charles Krauthammer. And they had a great, it was really a treat. They had a great principled debate at the dinner, and at the end of it they said, you see that we agree on literally nothing, but we do agree on American civics and our founding documents, the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Federalist Papers, and each argument that we made emanated from those documents. And the organization was the Joe Foss Institute, and they had this model legislation called the American Civics Act. And civics is in nearly every state's curriculum, but it's not being tested or was not being tested in any state's curriculum, and then therefore it wasn't being taught. So I said, I just went out on the campaign trail the next day. I had, I think, 12 opponents in the primary, and I said, if you elect me governor of Arizona, every kid that graduates from an Arizona high school is going to pass an American civics and history test. Got spontaneous applause. So I was sworn in on a Monday, gave the state of the state the next Monday, and by the following Thursday we had passed the American Civics Act. We were the first state in the nation to do it. And this is a great audience. I'm going to come more often. And now 31 other states have passed it, and it's the same test that a new naturalized American citizen has to pass before they get their citizenship. So it's a good first start. I think there's much more we need to do on civics. We need to build that out to citizenship. I think many Americans have a real grip on what their rights are. We need to also have an idea what our responsibilities are around those rights.
That's true. Well, I think that raises a really good point. I think it's as likely or more likely that a high school student today would learn about Colin Kaepernick when it comes to civics than they would about James Madison, which leads me to the approach you took toward Nike in the wake of the whole Betsy Ross, when they took the sneakers off the shelves. Can you comment on that, please?
Sure. So there was a nexus to that reaction. Nike was actually looking at a location in Arizona, looking at several other states and sites across the country. And on the day that they had made a decision to possibly come to Arizona, that was the day that they also announced, if you were following it, it was the beginning of the 4th of July weekend, that they had these beautiful tennis shoes with the Betsy Ross flag on the back from the Spirit of '76 that were already inside the stores.
500,000, yep.
And somebody made the accusation that that flag represented white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And they pulled those shoes out of the store and wouldn't sell them. So what I said in my tweet, and I did call Nike a great American company, an iconic brand, but that there would be no incentive from the state of Arizona for them to locate in our state.
Yeah.
John, I figured somebody's got to stand up for Betsy Ross.
Well, on a personal level, I'm boycotting Nike. The stock is up 20% since I started that. But I will note that Betsy Ross was a widow to two men who died in the American Revolution, mm-hmm. and she owned no slaves. And in many respects, she should be looked up to as a woman who was independent, ran her own upholstery store, sewed things, and had her own business. And the way he distorted that whole message really rubbed me the wrong way. So
And
congratulations to you for taking a stand.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning it. And I also want to say that I went out of my way to not ask for a boycott of Nike. I think that that's really what the other side does, is this cancel culture. What I wanted to do is just sell the shoes.
Right.
Just put the Betsy Ross flag that's already on the back of the shoes and let the people buy them. Why are you listening to one person that says that this represents something that it doesn't? And why would we let these extremists, sabotage these symbols that we love so much?
Along the theme of free markets, talk about the first in the nation occupational licensing reform that you've taken on in Arizona.
Thank you. Yeah, in Arizona, we passed a law called Universal Recognition of Occupational Licenses. Probably one of the biggest challenges that I've had as governor. You come into office and there's 200 boards and commissions that already exist. Many of them are there to block you, to stop you, to protect special interests, and to kind of a crony setup. And we've done a number of things. We fired all the government-funded lobbyists that sit on these boards and commissions. We tried to we tried to condense and eliminate where we can. But one thing we did to leapfrog, because each of them are a political entity in and of themselves that are protecting something out there that's existing, but we were able to come up with this idea that anyone that moves to Arizona, if they've been certified in the state where they reside and they're in good standing, we will recognize that credential. So they can move to Arizona, they can go to work immediately, they can start earning a living. We had folks, many of you look lovely tonight. There's this new shop that's out there called the Blow Dry Bar. And in Arizona, you had to go to school for 1,000 hours. This is no scissors involved to use a blow dryer. That's longer than an EMT, and take on $18,000 in debt before you could go work in a blow dry bar.
By the way, I used to be a customer there, but then...
But it not only goes for people that want to work in cosmetology, this goes for accountants, nurse practitioners. We've got all kinds of good people. We're very proud right now. Arizona is among the fastest growing states in the nation. Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the nation 3 years running, and Phoenix is the fastest growing city. This is not on a small population base. This is 4.8 million people. It's larger in just that metropolitan area than 26 other American states. In the game of ice cream, you used to say people vote with their dollars, and Cold Stone's winning. In the game of states, people vote with their feet, and Arizona's booming.
And you're getting a lot of those feet from the state of California. Can you talk about the differences between the People's Republic of California and the state of Arizona?
In my second state of the state, I was able to say that I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my partner in growing Arizona's economy, and that's been California Governor Jerry Brown. He was a real MVP. And I do think if you look at our policy prescription toolbox of lower taxes, lighter regulation, lower liability and litigation, more freedom for the citizen to allow them to go to work, to start and scale a company, to climb the economic ladder. Those are some things that have differentiated us. And now we've got our momentum. I mean, when I came into office, in the first year we had a $1 billion deficit, a budget that wasn't balanced, an education system that was mired in lawsuits, and a sluggish economy. You fast forward 5 years later, we have a $1 billion surplus in our general fund, a $1 billion balance in our rainy day fund, a balanced budget, and a roaring economy. So it can be done.
And yes, it can be. And you've pumped a lot of money into education, into public school education, into school choice. Tell me how you can do that as a governor on the school choice side, especially.
Well, first we had to make those tough decisions in the first year, which any business person out there understands, is you have to tighten the belt and say no to a lot of requests. And there was some unpopularity around that. It was seen as, here comes the business guy, all he cares about is the budget. But I knew that either the economy was going to turn around, or if it didn't, we'd be happier that we made the tougher decisions earlier. I was 50 years old when I was first elected and been in the private sector for 30 plus years. I thought every time I've been through a downturn, I wish I would have acted faster and gone deeper. I wasn't going to take all that wisdom now in the largest job that I had ever had responsibility for and not apply it. So we were able to do that, and now we're in a position where I don't want to say that I'm grateful that you said that, because we have put a significant amount of money into K-12 education. It is the largest item in any state budget, but we've tried to target it and focus on outcomes and results. You know, what I'm most proud of in Arizona is that we're leading the nation in improvement in math and reading. I don't brag on how much money we're spending. I want to see are those dollars having a return on investment. That's a tribute to the hardworking teachers that are in the classroom. It's a hard thing to teach young people, and oftentimes that teacher won't have the same support that they had from the parents as when we were kids. So I want to make sure that they're feeling the support where we're going to give them those opportunities. And then the other thing that Arizona leads in is choice for our students. We have 550 charter schools in Arizona. In a crowd like this, you know what a charter school is. It's a public school with private management. It's serving over 200,000 Arizona kids. And if you take those 200,000 kids, that's the #1 state in the nation for achievement. That's the results they're getting.
That's fantastic. I'd like to turn over to the audience, but before I do, you know, we have a lot of young people here. What sort of inspiration or thoughts would you like to give them with your free market background in the public sector now? What kind of encouragement would you give them, Governor?
Well, the first encouragement I would give them is just to say a message of gratitude and thanks that you're here. I got here early. I'm staying at the hotel, came down to the reception, and the audible level of the amount of camaraderie and collegiality was terrific. I mean, this is a lot of fun. This is a great crowd, and you can build this crowd. I think our ideas have always had an uphill climb. So to bring someone else from the business school or your dinner club or your dorm or your apartment and just try to be that happy warrior that helps people understand that freedom works, that our ideas, you know, in an ordered liberty society can produce these incredible results. We can see right now that some doubt has crept in, and inside many of our educational institutions, people are embracing ideas that we know historically have never worked. I mean, the things that have produced the peace and prosperity and family formation that we have in this country is something we've been working on for now 243 years. We don't want to lose this chasing some of these big fantasy lies that haven't worked in the past, and that's what happens in these election cycles. They have consequences, and we have that coming up, and it's always been the energized people that want to communicate these better ideas that can help change the tide.
Great. Let's turn it over to the
support
audience.
Lauren. Support Lauren.
Exactly. All right. Yes. I don't know if we have a microphone. Lauren, are you going to run around? Okay.
Thank you so much for your wonderful comments. I'm a senior here at Yale College and was formerly a board member of the Buckley program. What would you say to a lot of young conservatives in America who are disillusioned with the Republican Party and feel like the Republicans no longer align with our conservative value systems anymore? I feel as though myself and many of my peers are in this situation where we don't feel as though we have a party that represents us. We're not democratic socialists, but current Republicanism is not what we are either. What would you say to us? What message do you have to those young conservatives out there that are feeling a little lost?
So I think it's a great question, and it's a very fair question. One of the things that I enjoy most is I get to talk to a lot of high school students and college students, and I'm always amazed how many of them already know their party affiliation. I think of it, and I say to high school students, how many Democrats in the audience, how many independents, how many Republicans? Nearly every hand goes up for one category. And I say that I wouldn't have known how to answer that at the same age that you are. And I don't think that people should put their confidence in the parties. The parties are changing. That's the beauty of conservatism. Okay, it's timeless truths. It's guiding principles that we can embrace, and there may be new and fresher ways to communicate them. There may be ideas like the American Civics Act or universal recognition of occupational licensing, but what that represents is freedom and opportunity and people that act with good character that are rewarded around that. What the Republican Party has been for a long time is the best vehicle for which conservatism to be communicated with. But I think that's a battle that we'll always have. We can see many of the things that are important to us coming alive inside the Republican Party, but we also see some things that are not being tended to. But I don't see a better vehicle at this moment in time. I consider, one of the things that I love the most about William F. Buckley is that he was a full spectrum conservative, and he knew how to build that winning coalition. And I say this as the governor of Arizona, and we say in Arizona that Barry Goldwater didn't lose that election in 1964. It just took them 16 years to count the votes. And that same type of happy warrior message communicated by young people, male, female, people of different backgrounds, I believe I can show you what it's done in the state of Arizona in an election cycle when the wind was in our face. It's still a winning message. And for me, that message has found comfort and attraction inside the Republican Party. And as long as it finds it, that's where I'll be communicating it from.
Thank you. Yep.
Hello, Jerry O'Driscoll, a speaker. Governor, I'm a resident of Arizona, and I just want everybody here to know you are speaking the truth. You've done what you said you've done, and the state is benefiting from this, and thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Jerry. Please tell the Arizona Republic.
We'll let Lauren. Lauren's doing her Phil Donahue thing right here. So the young kids don't remember Phil Donahue.
Governor, thank you so much for coming. You briefly mentioned him.
What's your name? What's your name?
Hovik. I'm a sophomore in the college. Okay. You briefly mentioned him, a great American, a great Arizonan, one of the fathers of American conservatism, Barry Goldwater. What do you think Americans can take from a lot of the things Senator Goldwater said, some of his policy perspectives? What can we implement in the country right now?
I think one thing that you can take from Barry Goldwater is that he spoke with confidence and conviction about his beliefs. He was fearless in these principles. Many of you know your history pretty well in this room, and you know that John F. Kennedy was assassinated and Lyndon Johnson was brought into office, and many look back on that historically and think the country just wasn't ready for 3 presidents in 2 years. So it never really had the fair hearing that he wanted, and that's why we say the election wasn't lost, because Reagan ran on that same platform and was able to communicate those principles. And I was talking to Senator Buckley here at dinner and saying, if you think about it, Ronald Reagan was the candidate or the nominee in 1976 that was considered too extreme for the nomination, who won re-election in 1984 with 49 states. And he never broke faith with the cause. It's almost inconceivable to think of somebody winning 49 states in this day and age. But I think that type of thing is possible. They were good ideas, properly communicated, that benefited our citizens and also, by and large, united the country. I mean, we're always going to have the to and fro, the back and forth. We talk left and right. I loved how Reagan and National Review talks about things as either up or down.
You know, you and I had an interesting conversation during dinner. We don't seem to see or hear the spirited defense of conservatism and of capitalism in this country anymore. I mean, you know, we have Elizabeth Warren who wants to pay through everything by taxing billionaires, and that's all well and good. But to me, you know, I feel like I should genuflect at the altar of Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. I mean, these are devices and things in my life that make my life eminently so much easier to operate, so much more convenient, and I'm so much more knowledgeable and efficient in the things I do. I don't care if they're billionaires or not. I don't want to punish them. And I think the whole notion of sort of free healthcare, free education, free this, free that, and free everything, and nobody's standing up and just saying supply side economics, conservatism, conservative economics, that's really the way forward for the future of this country. And we just don't hear, I think, public officials stand up to that the way they should.
Well, a couple things on that, John, is one, I can think of better places to genuflect than Jeff.
I can't, my knees are shot anyway, I can't genuflect.
And I don't begrudge those guys anything. I mean, they've created great value.
Right.
For those of you in business school, you can learn incredible lessons from them. I wish that they would be more defending of the vehicle that allowed them to create this immense generational wealth. I do think as elected officials, and this is really the beauty that we have right now in this moment, whatever your issues are with the Republican Party, we do have a booming American economy. We do have job expansion from sea to shining sea. And there's no better time to make the case for free enterprise than when people are benefiting from it. I think this decade of stagnation and insecurity and instability, where you didn't see the company formation, you didn't see the entrepreneurial pursuits, you didn't see the animal spirits, it allowed this great lie of socialism to creep in because people thought that there wasn't a way for them to get ahead. I think we've seen this before where people are attracted to this. I also think this is part of the issue of why I believe in school choice. Sometimes when it's a top-down, one-size-fits-all, you see these ideas creep into the curriculum. We need to make sure that young people understand when they're learning their economics. And in Arizona, both at Arizona State University and the U of A, we have freedom schools that teach free market economics, Western civilization, Shakespeare, the founders, those types of things. And that's what you want in a university. You can have everything under the sun. It should be that pursuit of wisdom and truth. What I get concerned with is when I go on a campus and our ideas are not allowed. Our ideas have been disqualified. That's the problem, and that's happening in too many places.
Very good point. Yes.
Yes. Governor, I wanted to ask you to comment on the partnerships that's been evolving between Arizona and Sonora. Sonora, as you know, but I don't think a lot of people in the U.S. generally know, is a high-growth part of Mexico, a very high-performing part of Mexico, and it's really been quite a transformational story, and it seems like this partnership between Arizona and Sonora, both very successful parts of their respective countries, might have some lessons for the U.S.-Mexican partnership more generally. Any thoughts on that?
Thanks so much for pointing that out. Mexico is Arizona's #1 trading partner, and it's not even close. It's ×4 any other trading partner. So my first international trip as governor was to Mexico City. My first international trip upon re-election was to Mexico City. And so we've really built those relationships. Our trade corridor is booming. Those are the good guys working with the good guys. The trade, the trucking, the transit, the tourism. And that has also allowed me not only to build those relationships in good faith, but to be someone who has been incredibly strong and outspoken on border security, which is to stop the drug cartels and the human traffickers and the child sex traffickers. And you can do both. I mean, you could have 44 other governors sitting in this chair tonight that have either a #1 trade relationship with Mexico or Canada. We're very fortunate in this country to have those as our neighbors, our partners, and our allies, along with those two great big bodies of ocean. And what I wanted to do was reset the relationship that we were going to work with the entrepreneurs and business people in Mexico, but we were going to put people and technology and forces and be a strong advocate for border security, because the poison that is coming across those borders from these cartels are harming our families and our country.
Hello, Governor. Thank you. A common refrain we hear among...
Give me your name. Give me your name.
My name is Ben Marrow, recent alum of the Buckley program. A common refrain among people who worry about the debt is that sort of the government's balance sheet is very similar to the household or the corporation's balance sheet. And just as we worry about sort of large amounts of debt among those agents, we should worry about large amounts of debt among the government. As someone who's come from the private sector and has managed a corporation, do you think of government debt in the same way as you think about corporate debt, or do you worry about one more than the other? And if they're different, how are they different?
I worry about the debt. I think if there was one issue, I got asked a very good question, a pointed question about the Republican Party and its issues with conservatism. This is something I think we're missing, is fiscal responsibility and fiscal restraint in this country. In a corporation, you go bankrupt. In a country, for a period of time, you can borrow and you can print dollars. No one knows when that bubble bursts. We are fortunate in this country that we are the reserve currency for the world, and that we are the nation, the world's largest economy. But we can't do this forever. We're going to have to make some decisions around spending. And I do believe we can continue to grow our economy. We're always going to have downturns. We're going to see some issues in the business cycle. But there's no reason we can't continue to have a robust expansion if we remove restrictions, regulations, and barriers. But we've got to get this debt under control. It's a ticking time bomb. It's the new Red Scare.
Well, the modern monetary theory right now says that
That's
deficits
baloney.
don't matter.
That's baloney.
You can continue to borrow.
What do you think of that, Dean? Okay, yeah, that's baloney. That's fool's gold.
Yes, sir.
Just give me your name, please.
George. Suspend disbelief for 1 second. You get sick of the Arizona sun. You want to experience the New England winter. Doesn't matter which state we're talking about. It could be Connecticut, New York. I mean, it's a race to the bottom. Illinois, New Jersey. You take over as governor of Connecticut. What would you do? aside from resign.
So, George, I want to say, and this is now 5 years in, somebody that came from the private sector, and I would say three things matter in an election cycle. It's the candidate, the campaign, and then the circumstances around that. And one thing that I think we've proven as Republican governors is that we can win in nearly any state. And I would point to Massachusetts and Charlie Baker, Maryland and Larry Hogan. You have a Republican governor in Bernie Sanders, Vermont. I think we forget how blue Wisconsin was before Scott Walker. Chris Christie was able to get in and at least try to stem the tide in New Jersey. So I do think as that chief executive, and what Charlie Baker will tell you in Massachusetts is he can talk all day long about fiscal responsibility and an entrepreneurial, business-friendly economy. They will elect Republican governors. Mitt Romney's evidence of that. So you got to find the right candidate here in Connecticut, and they can win that race. There's certain issues. You know, Mitch Daniels was one of my favorite governors in Indiana. He wrote a book, Keeping the Republic, and he did something when he ran. He announced his positions on the social issues when he started his campaign. And when he was asked a question on the social issues, he referred people to his website. and said, I spoke about that when I began running. You know, in Arizona, I am a proudly pro-life governor. And but I think when you're talking about what's going on here in Connecticut, a lot of these social issues, can governors affect the opinion? Sure. But it's really the people and the families that make the decisions. You're talking about the business climate, you're talking about taxes, regulations, liability, and litigation. I think that could be a winning message. And I do think if you look at the evidence of the other races that I just shared in blue states, I don't think there's a Democratic governor in New England right now. I think they're all Republicans. Connecticut can follow suit. Well, Maine, but Paul LePage just left after 8 years. Paul LePage. Oh, well, yes. But you get my point here, right? I mean, Massachusetts, Maryland, Vermont, New Hampshire, you can easily say Connecticut with that.
Governor.
Yes.
My name's John Avila. I'm a graduate of Yale College. I'm going to have to ask you what probably will be an uncomfortable question and mention a name that has not been mentioned today, Donald Trump.
Yes.
I've enthusiastically voted for every Republican president since Ronald Reagan. In the last election, I felt I was faced with an appalling choice. Mm-hmm. How do you speak to somebody like me who feels the choice will be even more appalling in the next election?
So, John, I've said to people, you know, some people will say to me, how do you manage working with the president so well? I say, well, first I have to manage my kitchen table. You know, my wife Angela and I just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary. I have 3 sons. We have these same kind of discussions. But the case that I make is the people decide who these nominees are, right? Now, I was an incoming freshman in 2016. I just won my race. I stayed out of the presidential. You get all these people calling you up. I liked a lot of these people. I'd gotten to know them. They had helped me. But I said, hey, I'm going to support whoever the nominee is. So if you come to the state, I'm going to have a leadership series at the chamber. I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to invite all my friends. And you can fight it out on the primary stage. And then whoever wins, I'm going to be supportive of. Well, that nominee just happened to be Donald Trump. The press came up to me and they said, what are you going to do now? And I said, I've been consistent the whole time. I'm going to support the nominee. That nominee won the election, fair and square. It was Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton. It really wasn't difficult for me at all. We're going to have another election. Now, I would point out, and I think if we were to talk further on this, we would share some of the concerns of what's happening in our political environment today. I have my own way of communicating, and I'll be responsible for that. But if you look at our tax code, if you look at the federal judges, if you look at the regulations, if you look at Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh, and what is likely to be 2 or 3 other picks in the next 4 years, I, again, do not think will be that difficult of a decision. But I think what we're going to see in 2020 will make 2016 look like patty cake.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Billy. I
wish I had a better answer for you. That's just, I'm being straight up with you. Go ahead, Billy.
There's no question federal power has grown extensively over the past century. Do you ever find federal law getting in the way of your policy objectives at the state level? And does this challenge depend on who's in power at the federal level?
Billy, absolutely. It's probably my biggest disappointment. It's almost hard for me to believe that somebody that became world famous in reality television shows, looking at a camera saying, you're fired, hasn't shrunk this federal government. You know, today in Arizona, I shared with you our budget numbers. We have 300,000 more jobs today in Arizona than we had in 2015. We have fewer state employees. Okay, so this can be done, and what I've said, I knew Mike Pence before I was elected governor. Mike Pence says, and I know this just from a state organization of $40 billion and 35,000 employees, it takes a while to get your arms around that. So then we were able to say, okay, we need more people in child safety. We need more people in Department of Corrections. We need more people as state troopers. We need fewer people in the bureaucracy. We need fewer people in administration. And like I said, we've got fewer people today. I think the only way you can tame this at the federal level is through headcount, budget, and government buildings. And I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to tackle that in the next 4 years. It's got to come. That's the only way to get the budget right, get the debt and deficit right.
Thanks, Governor. My name is Nicole Conway, and I'm a sophomore in Grace Hopper. I'm actually from Tucson, Arizona, and my hometown is currently voting to become a sanctuary city. I was wondering what you think the ramifications of that would be.
Nicole, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. And Nicole, if they were to do that, they're doing it. I imagine I've talked to some of the good folks down in Tucson proper. They do have some good intentions. They are compassionate. They would, according to the Democratic mayor of Tucson, the Democratic City Council of Tucson, the incoming Democratic mayor of Tucson, the chief of police, and the sheriff. They would lose $100 million in their city budget, and they would affect public safety in a negative way. So it's a bad idea, and I'm confident that the good people of Tucson will see it the same way in just a few short days. But tell your parents, your friends and neighbors to vote no on Prop 205.
I think we have time for...
All right, I can't find you. You're all over the place.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, one more question.
Governor, you talked about the virtues of having Californians come to Arizona. Before I moved to Arizona 10 years ago, I had lived in Nevada for 15 years. When I moved there, the main names were Laxalt and names like that. Mm-hmm. They're all demos now. And they're all demos primarily because the state is now run by people who moved from California. And as an Arizonan, I worry more about the Californians coming into Arizona than I'm serious about anything else, because they leave California, but where they go, they vote the same way. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure, I want to comment on that. I think I was able to take the message that we're talking about tonight, the message I'm most comfortable communicating in this room, to market in this last election cycle, and won by a larger margin than I did in 2014 with the wind in our face. But listen, we want to talk about securing our southern border. I don't like these Dodger fans either coming into Arizona. But, you know, I loved growing up in Toledo, Ohio. I was very fortunate to move out west, and I do think this, you know, it's one of the wonderful things about our country. Now, Greg Abbott in Texas, Texas has been a faster growing state over the last 20 years than Arizona. Much of their population growth has come from California. He did a survey of this and found that many of them were Republicans. They leave for a reason. We didn't conduct the same survey there. I look at it either way. I would prefer for people, if they want to change party affiliation, but if they'll just support this positive, pro-growth, you know, full spectrum conservative agenda, that's good enough for me. I do think we're going to have to continue to battle in the, you know, in the arena of ideas. And I don't think it's about encouraging people to just change party affiliations. We've got to talk about our policy ideas and the results that they have. I do think we have a good contrast with California, but what you're saying does concern me. We've been able to overcome that for the last decade, but I think it's going to be a challenge ongoing.
Excellent. Governor Ducey, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Great to be with you. We'll enjoy it very much. Thank you.